So last week we talked about what happens when you buy a guitar and it doesn't play as well as you would have hoped. And we talked about the things that you can do as an instrument owner to address those with a basic setup. But sometimes playability issues can't be addressed with a simple basic setup. You know, if you have just a problem with your action or your intonation, you can adjust those with a setup. If you have a problem with fret sprout, or if you have sharp fret ends, or if you have frets that have damage, or if you have a nut that is catching and causing your guitar to go out of tune, that is not really something you can address in just a basic setup. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Both of these guitars, when they arrived from Sweetwater, and I mentioned this in a previous video, they sounded amazing, but both of these guitars had some playability issues. This guitar had fret sprout. The fret ends could have been better. The neck feels great. The frets, actually, when I looked really close at them, I could tell it had been hanging in a guitar store. You know, they'd had a little bit of binging and banging on them. But the fret sprout was the major issue. And this guitar had two issues. That number one, it just absolutely will not stay in tune. And there are a couple frets that have some damage from one reason or another. So today, we are going to take a look at how to address those. I'm going to show you how to treat fret sprout. I'm going to show you how to treat the ends of frets and round them over and polish them. And then on this guitar, I'm going to show you how to treat the nut so that your strings will return to tune when you use the vibrato, and show you how to treat those frets. In this video, you will see me use some specialized tools. Some of them might be required for you to do a job like this, and some of them you could probably get by with other things. I'm not going to spend a lot of time delineating which ones are required and which ones are optional. I'm just going to use what I'm using. There might be a couple times where I point out and specifically say, no, you need this tool if you're going to do this. We're going to get going, and we'll show you these guitars at the end and how they turned out, okay? So the first thing you're going to have to do is, if possible, take off the neck. Makes working on fret ends really easy. You know, you can still work on your fret ends if you can't take off the neck. Taking it off really makes it easy. My sticker was really stuck here. I used a little bit of naphtha or actual lighter fluid to clean that up, and it shined up really nice. Shiny. But yeah, you know, if you can take your neck off, it makes working on fret ends really easy. Obviously, there's a lot of guitars that you can't. If it's a set neck or if it's like an acoustic guitar, you can't take the neck off to work on your fret ends. But if you can take the fret off, I really recommend it. It makes working on those really easy. So to work on your fret ends, there's a lot of ways to do it, but the way I use it is I use a fret end file. It's a great tool. StewMac sells them. Philadelphia Luthier sells them. They have a really fine tooth on them. And I just go at a perpendicular angle up from the side of the fretboard. And I'm just trying to catch the bottom of the tang. I'm trying to go straight up. And you can see I'm basically perpendicular to the fretboard here. I'm not trying to catch the top of the fret above the fretboard, just trying to catch that tang that is sticking out. Once you're all the way done, you can just feel the fretboard and feel if those are sticking out. Then it's time to move on and try to round over your fret ends. And this is the same tool, the fret end file, and it has two safe edges. It has a flat safe edge and a rounded safe edge, and they both can do two separate things, and you just very gently, you don't have to use a lot of pressure, to just safely round over the edges of your frets. And it's just a smooth rocking motion. You just gently work your way down the fretboard. It doesn't take very long, and this is a great skill to develop, and it's a great way to, you know, sometimes treat old guitars or you know, to increase the playability of your own guitars. Once those are rounded over, I like to polish them up with micromesh pads. These are the foam cord ones, and you just grab the pads, just rub them back and forth. Start at the lowest grit and work your way all the way up. And I'm cutting through a lot of footage here. I really like this method because it is really, really, really fast, and it gives you really shiny, buttery, smooth, super round, polished ends. So yeah, just work your way all the way through the grits. Sometimes it's kind of hard to tell which one is which. Use the chart, figure out which one is which. Go all the way up through the highest grit. I think the highest one is, I don't know, 8,000 or maybe 12,000. But yeah, when you're all the way done, it'll be nice and round and polished up. And then in this case, the frets still needed a little bit of work. So I just grabbed some 4/0 steel wool and went to town buffing it up. I mentioned this in my last video. If you're going to use steel wool on a guitar, mask off your pickups. You do not want steel wool shavings getting into your pickups. They can destroy your pickups and literally ruin them. And you can see here I'm using a magnet to pick up the loose shavings. I don't want it to damage the finish on a guitar. You can see how much of that steel wool shavings got picked up by that magnet. I did that a couple times, and you can see how well those turned out on this guitar. Nice shiny ball ends. Once that was all done, I had one more thing I needed to do. I needed to put this guitar back together, and when I put this back together, I actually had a little bit of an air gap, and I had to go back by hand and tighten that all the way down. I didn't even realize. So make sure you tighten those screws all the way up. This knob, I found I couldn't pull the knob. And so I'm going to replace that with this Telecaster knob. And this has a set screw. If you're going to do a set screw, one tip that you can do, if you have a split shaft knob pot like this, and you have a pot with a set screw, instead of just putting the pot on there however, like that, is try to get that set screw right on the middle of that shaft, so that when you tighten the set screw, it, instead of crushing the shaft, like if you put the set screw here, it would crush it, and I would actually weaken the pot. Instead, put the set screw in the middle, and as you tighten it, it'll actually spread these tines here into the pot, and it'll actually hold the knob tighter as you tighten the set screw. So I'm going to do that right now. Got the little shaft lined up. Here's the shaft spline. Drop the set screw right over the line. Kind of wiggle it back and forth until it seats. Tighten it pretty tight. Nice smooth movement. And now I can actually grab it. Okay, here we are, working on the grit. I just checked the setup on this, and surprisingly, it was kind of perfect.
Just loosen the strings.
Just going to get these strings off. Get these. Okay, you gotta be careful. You don't want to lose this. It's really important. Okay, so how do you set up a Bigsby so that it stays in tune? Well, the first thing is there's 4 screws here, right? And the thing is, you can actually, unlike, let's say, car tires, you want to torque down all the bolts on a car as tight as you can get them. On a Bigsby, you don't want to do that because this metal, it's not that strong. And you can see this is a carved top. It's round. If this was flat, it might not matter. This is round. There's felt washers underneath here. And so if you torque down on all 4 of these screws as hard as you can actually put stresses in this metal and bend it out of being flat on the bottom. That'll result in this handlebar not spinning smoothly. What you want is, when this handlebar spins, you want it to spin smoothly with no friction. Friction is the enemy of an in-tune vibrato. So right now I can tell there is no friction right here. That's a good friction-free environment. So that is not going to be an issue. Hey guys, editor Adam here, and I just realized as I was editing the video that I never talked about what you would do if your vibrato arm wasn't moving back and forth freely, and then what you would do is you could use a screwdriver to loosen the screws to balance the tension between the 4 screws. You want that vibrato sitting dead flat in relation to itself, not necessarily in relation to the top of your guitar. So you can balance the tension on those 4 screws so the vibrato, the Bigsby, is flat. And once your vibrato arm is bending back and forth freely without any friction, then you could move forward. Okay, guys, back to the video. Okay, just to cover my butt, I'm going to use a little tri-flow. Okay, so the next issue might be this. So I can tell right now this is hanging up just a little bit. And we want this to not hang up. So I'm going to lube that up. Yeah, that's much better. Yeah. Next issue is, let's take a look at this fret. So I think to show what's going on here, the easiest way might be to mark it with a pen. And I think if I just scuff that back, this is, I think this is 600 grit sandpaper. If I just lightly scuff that back, okay, that took care of that. 600 grit, man. Took that right off. So now what? So I got some scratches on there. So I'm just going to do my favorite trick. But this is going to kind of make a mess. I'm just going to do it. I'll just clean it up later. So I'm just going to take 1500 grit, the foam block, and especially focus on this area right here. Get the fret ends. This is going to make the fret board really dirty. We'll just clean it up afterwards with naphtha. The upside is that our frets are going to be polished to an almost stainless steel shine. So that's 1500, 1800. Make sure I get the fret ends. I'm going to start stringing up the guitar. Got my strings here. If you've never done a Bigsby, it can be complicated the first 30 or 40 times that you do one. So the first thing you do is you take your ball end and you kink the end of the ball end. Okay? Then you go under here. Then you go over this one. So you go under here. Then you hook. Right there. Okay, now while pulling tight here, you pull the other string through. You kind of have to keep constant tension here because if you let go, it'll pop off. So you can see that I've got tension over here still. Throw the string through here. Now this, you can kind of string like an acoustic guitar. I'm going to give about 4 fingers. And this one I'm just going to do, I'm going to do a wrap. So I'm going to go underneath and lock. Why? I don't know. That's what I feel like doing. Make sure it goes underneath there. Sits in the slot. So now, once I'm starting to get tight, go back here. Make sure it's seated in the pneumatic. And just get a pitch. I don't need a good pitch. I don't need it to be too pitched. Just need a pitch. Now, here's a good example of what starts to happen. So the strings, it's not like on the saddle here, where they automatically go where they need to go. The strings kind of go wherever they want to go. So you actually have to physically align them over, right over the pegs where you want them to go. Putting 11s on this guitar made a massive improvement to the tuning stability using the Bigsby, but there's still a little bit of problems. And so the biggest change that we can do to fix the tuning stability, the biggest problem is when they filed these nuts, they filed the nut at a completely straight angle, but the string turns, okay? So what happens is the string comes straight across and then has to turn. So when you're using the Bigsby, the string is going in and out of that nut slot. And that's a hard bend for it to take. So what we can do is we can ease that bend. And you can do the same thing on a Gibson. Gibsons are notorious for not being able to stay in tune, especially on the G string. And you can do the same thing on a Gibson. So what we'll do is we're going to loosen these 2 strings, not all the way, because we still want to know how that string rides. Pop that string out of there. See, that is the D. And I like to go one size smaller than it actually calls for. And I'm just going to start to direct just the back, and I'm not touching the front because the setup on these, the action on these is pretty good. So I'm not doing the front of the nut slot, just the back. And then I'm just angling it. Pop that in there. We want it to start to curve. I think that'll do it. You can probably see that curve now. It doesn't start to curve here. It starts to curve right here. It's a much more gentle arc for that string. Do the same thing on this one. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go 1 string size down on my nut slotting file, 13. And as I cut, I'm literally pointing right at, I'm literally following where the string would go. I'm pointing right at the hole that the string would go in. Now, if this was a customer's guitar, I would put some tape down here to protect myself from risking bumping into the customer's headstock. This is my guitar. I've never been precious with my own guitars, so I'm also back filing. Let's take a look at that. And then the other thing I'll do is I'm going to back file all of these a little bit better than they were. Once again, I'm gonna give it just a little bit of a relief. Yep, just dinged my guitar. $26. Okay, last thing I'm going to do, this is the abrasive cord, it's Max cells. Just if there's any burrs or anything, just a good way to round them off. Pencil lead. Okay, so this is the last one. I've used that abrasive cord, graphite pencil lead in each one. The thing about this is this can be a little ugly, so then you can just wipe it off. Okay, so now I'm just going to proceed with the setup like normal because I believe this is addressed and I believe the frets are addressed. So I'm just going to proceed with the setup like normal. I'll catch you at the end. Okay, so this guitar is all dialed in. It is 1,000 times better. I got no more crunchy frets. I can vibrato by hand with no problems. The setup on this guitar out of the box was really, really good. But having said that, doing my own setup is even better. I lowered the neck relief, I lowered the action, and now it plays even better. Polish the frets, you saw me do that. Polish the fret ends, you saw me do that. Oil the fretboard, dialed in the intonation, but the big difference that I did was treating the nut. I also oiled some things and all that stuff, but you got to listen to the difference. You know, I didn't do any before sound samples, but trust me, if you even looked at the wiggle stick, your guitar was out of tune. Okay, but check this out. So. Yeah, so it's awesome. That's how this turned out. Let's really quickly talk about the Strat and how it turned out with the treatment that I did to that. The fret ends are now super buttery smooth. There's no fret sprout, and with the treatment that they did to them from the factory was okay. How I treated them is I think much better. It's very comfortable to play. I took some micro mesh pads and polished up the nut, and I'd complained that it's got a synthetic bone nut, and that was bothering me. And polishing it up kind of eases my sensibilities a little bit. It makes it feel a little bit more right to me. They had kind of left it kind of rough, and it looked kind of hokey to me. But a big benefit for me is putting on this knob. It's kind of a dumb thing, but I couldn't pull the knob up on the push pull because of the way that Strat knobs are kind of hard to grab. Makes them easy to spin, but I swapped the knob out on this push pull with a Telecaster knob, which is a nice tall knob with knurling on it. Makes it really easy to grab. It's just an easy mod that I was able to do. So that's how those advanced setups worked out for me. Now listen, these are advanced setups, okay? I wouldn't recommend just diving right into this right from the get-go. This is the kind of thing normally you're going to want to take to a local tech or perhaps a luthier to try to address some of these issues. However, if you're serious about wanting to service your own guitars or perhaps getting into servicing other people's guitars, these are the kinds of things that you're going to need to learn how to do. So hopefully this will help you to learn how to do those things. Until next time, this is Miller's Custom Guitars, and I will catch you later.